Welcome. Have you ever wondered why can we know exactly what we need to do and still struggle to do it? Or maybe know what we need to stop doing and we keep falling back into the same old pattern? Like have a difficult conversation, say no instead of saying yes again, ask for help, rest more, exercise, eat differently. You understand the problem. You may even know exactly what your next step should be. And yet, when that moment comes, something else gets in the way. That gap between knowing and doing is one of the most common struggles we all experience. Even the Apostle Paul acknowledged it. He described knowing what he wanted or what he should do and yet not doing it, and then sometimes doing the very thing he didn't really want to do. So this isn't simply a problem for unmotivated, undisciplined, or spiritually immature people. It's a human problem. I experience this way too often. For example, when I decided to train for a half marathon, I knew what I needed to do. I understood that I needed a training schedule. I knew I had to gradually increase my mileage, run consistently, take care of my body, and keep going on days when I didn't feel like it. I had all the information, but the problem wasn't a lack thereof because I knew what to do. I even knew how to do it. But knowing the plan and consistently following it are two very different things. For a while, I tried to sustain it through this determination and willpower, and I got this. And willpower kind of worked to a point, and then all of a sudden it ran out, and it was difficult to keep pushing myself day after day after day when I was tired, busy, simply hated running. And then a friend, Danny, began training with me because he was going to do it with me, and suddenly I wasn't alone anymore. He showed up at my house regularly at 6 a.m., shoes on, ready to go. And when we would run, he'd encourage me. And he began to create this accountability and structure that I needed. And then I knew that at 5:30 he was going to be down there at 6 o'clock. So even on those difficult days when I needed to get running and I was having trouble sustaining it on my own, I knew that he would be there. And because of that schedule, I was no longer able, because of his schedule, he wasn't able to do it. But something had changed by then. I had developed the rhythm, the confidence, and the endurance, and the internal structure that I needed to continue, even if he wasn't there. What I had first kind of gathered from him, that support and that coming alongside, was something that was now in me. And I kept training. And I even completed the marathon. I even beat him. And it was wonderful. And so the knowledge is necessary, but knowledge and information and insight alone is not enough. It's relationship what turned what I knew into something I could actually live out. So that gap between knowing and doing does involve things like encouragement and support and structure. And yet at other times, something deeper is operating below the surface. So, for example, we may know consciously, I need to speak up. But another part of us is learning, if I disagree, people may become upset with me. Or, I really want to connect deeply with someone, but another part says, if people discover who I really am, they may not like me. Or I know I need to ask for help. I can't do this, but this older emotional conclusion says, if I ask, I'm going to be seen as weak. Or, I'm going to try something new, but if I make a mistake, I'm going to lose their respect. And finally, if I give my boss or my pastor or anybody else feedback, there will be consequences. And we may never consciously realize those things, but these are deep emotional, relational expectations that kind of shape us before our cognitive mind even has time to intervene. That's why simply telling ourselves the truth or trying harder or white knuckling, it's not enough. And I've experienced that like recently. When I wake up, I'm anxious. There's always something stirring. I'm dreading the day. And my first and natural instinct is I'm just going to think my way out of it. And I remind myself of what's important, what's true, what's on my agenda. I pray about it. I look for solutions. I get willpowered and I'm going to do it. I'm going to get it all done. And those aren't bad, but in the moment, they don't reach the part of me that feels anxious or afraid or just immobilized. There's lots of shame there. And what finally began to shift was when Bruce reached out to me. He's part of my life team. And he just listened. What's up? What's going on? And he accepted even these parts that didn't want to work that day. See, nothing had changed externally. He didn't have some advice he was going to give me, something I never considered before, but it was inside that safe relationships I began to feel less alone. I experienced his connection and acceptance. He even made space for that part of me that just couldn't make my anxiety and my dread go away. And I just settled in. I began to think. I actually then was able to move on the very place that I was stuck. See, what I needed wasn't something that information alone could not give me in that moment. I needed someone, a safe relational presence. And I've also learned this from the other side. I don't know, maybe you've done this. You try to help somebody who is struggling. And of course, we can see what the problem clearly is. And I knew what they needed to do for the next step. So I, of course, gave them some excellent advice. It was thoughtful, practical, it made sense. And had the person followed it in my thinking, it probably would have helped. But it didn't touch anything. My advice had addressed the problem, sort of, but had not really reached the person. Later, as I reapproached the conversation differently, instead of trying to fix the situation with the person, I became curious, I listened, was compassionate. I really tried to help them feel like I understood what it was like to be them and how hard that's been. And as they began to feel that validation and I was with them in them, something loosened inside. We began to discover what my advice had missed. What was happening beneath the behavior and what made change so difficult, we were finally starting to talk about that. Once he began to feel like, hey, Greg gets me, something freed up his left brain and began to think about what he wanted to do next. And that experience taught me that something that I still need to do is that people don't always need more information or an answer. They just sometimes need the experience of being understood. That makes a new answer possible. So let me shift gears on that because I want to say that's the heart of what I teach about in whole brain coaching. Instead of reframing false beliefs or helping them see their true identity in Christ, we pay attention to their right brain, which contains their emotions, their schemas, or expectations that operate below this pattern that has us stuck. And we love helping people experience something different. They get validation instead of criticism. They get acceptance instead of shame. They feel safety instead of like, oh, he's going to not like this. And support instead of having to do everything on their own. So can I invite you to my upcoming whole brain coaching workshop? You don't have to be a professional helper to benefit from it, right? You can be a parent who wants to help your kids, a spouse, a friend, a pastor, a leader, teacher, mentor, even a small group leader, or just simply someone who wants to understand your own patterns more clearly. Or maybe because you want to help other people grow. I'd love to have for you to join us on next Monday night for that. There's a registration link included in this email. By the way, I'm also going to be exploring these kinds of ideas more deeply in a talk and a couple of workshops I'm going to be doing in September at our Neuro-Relational Summit. You can also find information about all that there in this accompanying email. Thanks so much for joining me today. Bye now.